Hello everyone and welcome back. Jean Umberto here. In this video we are going to look at part 1 of the solution on the question of using timers to create a timekeeper. So in this part we are going to write our graphical user interface using HTML and CSS, and we'll create a JavaScript file and connect it to the HTML document and test if these two files are connected. I will use the NetBeans IDE, but feel free to use any code editor of your choice. So let us go ahead and start creating a project. So here I am in NetBeans, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a project. So I'll go ahead and click on the new project icon, which is right here. And of course it's going to be of category HTML5/JavaScript, and on the project side HTML5/JS application. Then I'll go next. I'm going to name this project quiz timer, and I'll just click on the finish button. Now NetBeans is going to generate a few files for me, but I don't need any of these, so I'll go ahead and clean it up. So I'll close the index.html file, the JSON files and the JavaScript files generated. I'll make sure that they are all gone, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this index.html document which NetBeans generated for me. I'll just go and say delete, and still on the site root I'm going to right click and create a new HTML document, and I'm simply going to call it timer. Then I'll click on finish. Again, NetBeans has generated some code for me. I'll go ahead and remove everything. So I will select everything and delete. Then I will save the change. So what I want to do is actually write a simple HTML skeleton. So I'll start with the HTML tag, and then I'll write the head tag and the body, and that's basically what I need as the container. Right inside the body section here, I'm going to think about how I want to present the solution to the user. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a parent container, inside of which I'm going to create 3 children. So if you think about a family tree, you have a parent and then you have children. So I'm going to have 1 parent and 3 children. So I'm going to create divs. So this div here is going to be my parent div, and I'm gonna just give it an ID main. Okay, so this is the main container. Make sure you always save the change when you are writing your code. So the next thing is to create 3 divs which will represent the children of this main container. So I'll go ahead and say div. So this is the first div, and I'll just go ahead and copy and paste it 2 times. So what I have here is a set of 3 children of the main container, and I'm going to give each an ID. So this one is going to be given the ID hours, and this is where I'm going to keep information about the hour, and this is going to be minute. This is where I'm going to keep information about the minute, and the last is going to be second, and this is where I'm going to store information about the second elapsed or the second used. Go ahead and save. Now if I run this file, of course using Chrome, you can see in NetBeans you can just go ahead and make sure you select the second Chrome icon here. You right click and run the file, and for now you won't see anything because we have our containers, we have our divs, but we haven't said exactly how we want it to look like. So we need to actually dictate how we want that to be presented using CSS. So let us go ahead and start writing code for the layout. Okay, so the main container is going to be larger, as you might expect, than all the children, and I'm just going to give it 450 or 500 pixels. It will depend on what you feel will be enough space for your users. So what I'm going to do right here is simply start the style, So this will be now the CSS section here inside the style tags, and I'm going to start with the main part. And in CSS, of course, to address an HTML ID, you basically start with the pound sign or hash, then you write the name of the ID. In this case, it is the ID main that I'm targeting here. So the first thing is to set a border. I want to set a border around that container. I'll say it's going to be 1 pixel solid, and I'll give it the color black. In CSS, you can use the hex code, or you can simply use the color name in English: white, black, red, green, and so forth. So now if I save this file and refresh this page, you can see that we have a screen-wide bordered container. So what we need to do now is to give it some width. I'm going to give it the width of 450. So this is the idea that I have. I want to have a container which I can split or divide into 3 parts. The first part for the hour, the second minute, and the last second. So now if I think about that division by 3, then we have 150 for each part. So I'll go ahead and test this file again by right clicking and say run file, and now you can see that the width has changed to 450. The next thing is to set the height. So I'll simply say height. I just want to make it a bit shorter. That will be 200 pixel. So I'll go ahead and run this again, and I can see that we have our main container, which does not fill the screen. So I want to actually put it right in the center of the screen, and you can do this in CSS by simply saying you want to set the margin to auto. There we go, and I run this file again. Now you can see that our container is centered. Alright, so now it's time to do the division. I want to create a style for the hour, the minutes, and I'm not gonna worry about the second, and I'll explain why. So I'll go ahead and say pound, and that will be for the hour. And what I want to do here is to simply say that I want a border, but this time I want a border to the right, and this is what I mean. I want a border somewhere here. I don't want a border around this child. I want a border right on the right of the child here. So I'll say border right, and I'll say 1 pixel, just like I did before, and this time I'm going to use the English word black. I'm going to save that. Now it's time to define the width. Okay, so the width is just going to be 1/3, which is 150. The height, I'll set the height to 100%, and what this basically means is that I want the height of this child to be exactly the same as the height of its parent. So I'll go ahead and save this file, and I will refresh my browser. Now you can see that we have that child here, which is 1/3 of the entire container, and you can see on the right we have a border. Alright, so the next thing is to just copy what works here and actually change the value of this ID, and I want to set this to minute. So now I'm talking to this div right here. So now notice one thing. If I simply save this file and run this project again, you will see that we do have another div, but this time it has gone right underneath the main container, and it's not what we want. We want this second part to be right after the first one. So how do we do that in CSS? We'll simply float both children to the left. So we'll say float to the left, and here I also want to float this to the left, and that's all we really need to do. So I'll go ahead and save this again, run this file, and now you can see that we have the first div, the second, and the third one will automatically take the remaining available space, which is of course 150. Okay, so it looks like we are really on the way to completing our task. The next thing we are going to do is create some kind of a toolbar. So what I mean here is to actually have labels here that will say this is for the hours, this is for the minutes, and this is for the second. So how can we do that? Inside each child, I'm going to go ahead and create a div. So I'll simply say div, and let me go ahead and give this a class. So I'll simply say space class, and I just want to call it toolbar. Okay, and I'll go ahead and copy this code and paste it inside each child. Okay, and I'll come down here and paste it here. So let me go ahead and separate each of these children. Okay, so now we have the first child, the second, and the third. So I'll go ahead and save that change. And the next thing is to actually code the toolbar, because if we run this file, we won't see anything until we give it some style in CSS. So let me go ahead and do just that. So I'll come down here and say toolbar. And what I want to do here is to actually give it the height. And I'll say give it a height of 35. 35 should be reasonable. If you run the file, you won't see anything until you give it a border. And this time, I want to give it a border bottom. So I want to put a border at the bottom of each toolbar. I don't want to put a border all over it. So I'll simply say border bottom 1 pixel solid, and again I'll say black. So I'll go ahead and save this file, go back and refresh, and now you can see that we have some kind of a toolbar in each of these children. So that is it here. I'm just going to give it a background color so that it's more visible, and I'll simply say it's going to have black as well. I'll refresh this page. You can see now we have the dark color right there. And the next thing I'm going to do is to put in my label. So here I'll say hours, and here I'll say minute, and lastly I'll say seconds here. So if I run this file, as you may guess, you won't see anything because by default the color is black. So we're just gonna go ahead and change here the color of our label to white. White is represented by the hex triple F, or you can simply say white in English. So I'll go ahead and save, run this file again. Now you can see that we have hours, minutes, and seconds. The next thing we are going to do is make sure that our labels are centered. So I'll go ahead again here and say text align, and I'll say center. And you can appreciate the code completion that we have in advanced IDEs. I'll go ahead and save and run this file again. Now you can see that we are just fine. The next thing is I want to add the font size. I'll simply say font size, and I'm just gonna give it 30. I'll save this change and go ahead and run this file, and now it's bigger and I'm happy with this. Okay, so this is where we are going to keep track of the value of the hours. Here we're going to keep track of the value of the minute, and here keeping track of the value of the second. So I'm just going to create spans right here. I'll say span. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 spans, and this is going to have an ID as well, and this time I'll just call it HR for hour, and I will copy it just to save time. And here I'm just going to say MN for minute, or MNT for minute, and the last one I'll simply say sec or second. So here I can just put in the label 0, 0, and 0. So I'll go ahead and save, rerun the file 0, 0, 0. The next thing I want to do is basically make sure that my labels are big enough. So I'll go back to my code, and I want to set a style inside the main div. So I'll go back to the main div here, and I'll simply say font size, and I'll make it bigger, 45. I'll save the changes, refresh my page. Now you can see that we have 0, 0, 0, but this time they look like bigger characters. So now I'll make sure they're also aligned in the center, and I'll just come here and say text align, and I'll say center. Save the file, rerun it. Now everything is in the center. So I'm happy about my graphical user interface. The next thing to do is basically to write my JavaScript code where all the logic is going to come from. But before I do, I want to make sure that this file, timer.html, is connected to the logic file, which will be the JavaScript file. So what I'm going to do is right click on the site root again here and create a new JavaScript file, and I'm going to name it timer, just like I've named the first one timer, but the difference is that this is going to be a JavaScript file. You can see now we have timer.js. I'll remove all the generated comments, and the next thing is of course to make sure that these two files are connected. So what I'm going to do is basically come back to the HTML file, and right inside the head section here I want to write my script tag. So I just want to say script, and I will just basically go ahead and close the script here, and I just want to make sure that it's connected to the timer.js. So I'll simply say src, and that's going to be the value timer.js. okay, and you can go ahead of course and set a type, but it should work even if you don't set a type in current browsers, of course. Alright, so that's all I need to do. So now if I run this file, you won't be able to see anything because we haven't said anything in our JavaScript logic, and that's what we're going to do now, and we'll move on to the next video. So I'll say window.onload. I'm going to listen to when the window is ready, that is the page or the document is ready, and I'll simply say alert, hey there, welcome to JS timer. Okay, so I will save the changes here. I'll go back to my browser, refresh the file. Now you can see we have the message, hey there, welcome to JS timer. I'll go ahead and say okay, and that's it. So this is really the end of this video. In the next one we are going to start writing the solution to our problem. And in NetBeans, I just want to point out that you can actually drag and drop. If you don't want to type this by your own hand, you can actually just drag and drop this by simply coming to the JavaScript file and bring it down and just drop it to wherever you want to use it. And you can see now that it is right here. Okay, so thank you for watching, and let us meet in the next video where we are going to start writing the timer logic.